And we have Councillor Steve Clark online from Dudley. I believe we've got some visitors in the room. Member of the press, could you?
Yeah, Gurjit Pandey, local democracy reporter based at Birmingham Live.
Okay, thank you. Right, we then go to declarations of interest. Anybody got any declarations of interest?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just on item 8, the funding is subject to cabinet approval as I'm going to be council. Just leave an assurance I can stay in the meeting and speak, or do I need to leave?
Do we have any advice on that?
Yeah, no, as a obviously a member of Birmingham City Council, that's understood when you're part of the combined authority, so it's part of the same role. So there's no issue with that.
Okay, I wasn't at the last meeting on the 19th of January. Does everybody accept this as a true record? Yeah. Thank you. We have got quite a lot to go through today. I'm going to keep questions to a minimum, so if you can make them fairly sort of pointed and short, please, then we'll, you know, for the items of discussion, we'll do what we can. But you know, we've got a great deal to get through today. Okay. Right, we might go on to the investment programme update. Ian, please.
Yep, thank you, Chair. So funding commitment at the end of January is unchanged, 844.3 million versus funding available for 871 million, with the difference being those earmark contributions approved by the CA board. Costs incurred on the drawings to the end of January are 760.1 million. The last time we reported was November due to sequencing, which was 730.9, so a bit of a shift upwards there. Since the last board meeting, CA officers have exercised delegated powers to approve 2 business cases or change requests. These have been change requests. Kingshurst Village Centre, we approved an extension by 15 months to the £5.73 million project. There's no increase in the financial limit or other terms. And similarly, Solihull Sustainable Energy project, it's a low carbon heat network project, has had its project extended by 12 months. And again, there's no increase in the terms, the outputs, or the funding limit, which is 200k. I'll move on to the dashboard if there's no questions.
Everybody happy with that? Yeah.
So with regard to the dashboard, we have 84 projects, 54 which are live. There are 10 projects which are showing a red status. That's a reduction of 2 since last board session. Those projects are largely on time. So the one red rated project relates to the metro. That's the Wednesbury to Briley Hill extension, whereas the original expiry was March 26. The extension to summer 26 is required. We're waiting a change request on that, and it'll be subject to having a definitive date based on construction works. And there are 9 red rated projects for SNBC under the UKC infrastructure and UKC interchange. Sponsor has submitted a change request for those projects. We're just querying our management costs on these. We are waiting response from SNBC. We have the information, so when that's obtained, hopefully we will be able to clear those as change requests and extend limits.
Okay, do we have any questions on those at all? No. Okay, we'll move on to item number 5, which is the dashboards. Nick.
I'll tell you, Chair, as for items 5, 6 and 7, therefore noting in the public session, and we'll cover any questions in the private session.
Okay, everybody happy with us doing that? Yeah. Okay, we go on to item 8, which is the East Birmingham Depot construction. And I believe we have somebody else, Elliot Wild.
He's on screen, Chair.
Thanks, Chair. Hi all, yeah, so I'm stepping on behalf of Joe Shaw today. So I'm Elliot Wild, I'm head of commercial responsible for fleet within the franchising team. I've been involved in the development of the Kitts Green depot alongside Joe and others. So I'll just walk us through the proposal and the decisions being asked from the board today. Let me just share my screen. Can everyone see that okay?
Yep, thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. So I guess just to start this with a bit of context and background to how we got to this point. So as I'm sure you're all familiar with, so in May last year, we took the decision as a CA to move to re-regulate the bus network and to go down the franchising model. As part of the work that was done within that, we were made aware that there was a need to replace the Birmingham Central Garage, which is one of the largest garages in the region, carrying about 200 buses. That replacement was due to National Express having sold that site and needing to vacate by the end of 2027. So we were fully aware that that was needed to happen as part of the franchising process, and the depot paper that went back end of last year, we secured partial budget for supporting the development of that new site. So we've looked at various different options within that space, some of which were previously looked at by National Express, and the Kitts Green option is what's coming forward as optimal. We've always been clear that the Kitts Green solution is a partial solution to the BCC site. Now, because the BCC site itself is a very large depot, within the franchising assessment, it was very clear that the optimal size of a depot was between 100 to 150 vehicles. So the 200 vehicle size was oversized. It was also in an inefficient space in the network. So by relocating at least part of the depot to Kitts Green, we're developing significant efficiencies in the network and reducing a large amount of dead mileage. So overall, we believe that the actual Kitts Green site is an optimal solution to being put forward, and there are secondary mitigations to support the remaining fleet that will come out of BC Birmingham Central when that closes. So I'll just walk us through where we're at in terms of the depot design, the overall programme, and then
moving. I'm assuming he's still not just talking on the one slide, is he? Otherwise, this is a hell of a long presentation.
I'm being asked whether you're moving the slides or...
No, I haven't moved the slides on. I was just giving that. I think that was just some important context, and I whipped through where we're at in the second part quite quickly. Sorry about that.
Bossy chick out one and then they all come together.
Thank you very much. So yeah, just for context, this is the design that's been proposed. So we've reached REBA stage 1. So this is designed for a total of 110 buses. We're seeing the outline design being done here. So it's a fully contained site, providing all the facilities that are needed for parking, maintenance and staff at the site. The programme, so we're, as I flagged, the end of 2027 is when the Birmingham Central Garage is due to close, and we have a current programme which is looking to develop these, to have the site completed early 2028. So there's a bit of a stopgap that will need to be provided, but we're moving forward at pace to try and deliver that solution. We're reaching towards the planning stage. So we've had early planning engagement with Birmingham as the planning authority. So general support for the site. There are some outstanding questions around flooding, which need to be addressed, but we've got a proposed solution on that, essentially putting in a holding response whilst further information is provided around the flooding site. Key risks obviously is around the flooding zone, power provision. We're moving fast to secure a power connection for the site of a maximum 6 MVA, but that's a worst case scenario, and we should have a connection offer in the coming weeks. And then other elements are around ecology, programme constraints, and the need to move very quickly on this. And then finally, budget control. So the overall budgeted position for the actual depot, we've gone for a fully extensive design with options to rescope to keep within the overall budget envelope. I'll move on. So the investment board's being sought to make the recommendations to approve the business justification case for the Kits Green depot and the overall budget of 19.9 million for the construction of the site, with delegation down to the executive director in consultation with the relevant officers as well. But is there any questions relating to this?
So no problem with this, Chair, in principle, and if Birmingham was supportive of it, then no problem at all. The question I can't find, though, the answer to, who will own it once it's built?
So as was set out in the wider depot strategy, WMCA will be the owners of the depots in the region, or be the primary leaseholder. So we've already gone through and secured the Walsall depot. We've got one of the sites at West Brom with the option for leasing the second. So this will be a further site that will be owned alongside the other 9 depots in the region.
Yeah.
Well, that's to be agreed yet, of course.
Mm. Yeah.
So that's a bit presumptuous, and I'll just make that point here today.
Right.
I want that minuted, that any decisions that are made on any land exchanges or building exchanges or contract are to be agreed at a later stage. They're not agreed yet.
No. Are you saying that's a problem? I mean, should that hold it up?
What I'm not giving support to is a carte blanche for the CA to take over land or ownership or buildings that are currently in another third party's ownership. That's not right.
I think, Councillor, in this particular instance, it's only referring to you're not giving any decision other than for the.
No, I agree. It was just a comment that was made by the officer that this means that all 9 will be owned by the CA. That's not correct.
That's not the intention of the paper.
No, well, that's what you just said. So I just want that minuted.
Yeah.
Clarity. Yeah.
Just the size of the project bothers me, in as much that traditionally all transport projects have gone over budget. Now we're talking about a lot of money here, and if you were to go, I don't know, 10% over budget, which seems to be an average, that's many millions of pounds. What chance have we got? What assurances have we got that the contract management will be such that there is no overspend?
I must admit, Councillor Bird, that's one of my concerns. There's now fixed prices in here, and I'm in the same organ with you that they're always overspent, and this needs to be delivered rapidly. It's whether you're going to be coming back cap in hand for more money later. These are the concerns, I think.
Sorry, the reason we say this, it's very like mastermind, really. I've started, so I'll finish. And as a result, we end up with a project that starts at 50, 60 million quid. And all of a sudden, we're getting towards the end and, we made a bit of an error here. We need another 10 million, and you think, oops, a daisy. What categoric assurance can you give us that this has been costed to that effect?
I think fully understand the concerns coming forward here. So, as I said, we're at RIBA stage 1 now. I think ideally we'd have liked to have brought this to the board at a point when we had slightly more detailed designs and slightly more certainty over the contract pricing. However, given the timescales, we are trying to move much more quickly here than we normally would. However, we've looked at this design in a lot of detail. Our approach has been very prudent in the sense that we've looked essentially at the fullest extent of design that we can have, and we've got 15% contingency within the budget, but we also have several known areas where we could realistically de-scope to bring the budget down if we're seeing upward pressures coming forward. So overall, we have good confidence that we can manage that budget both through the contingency and options to revise the scope. It will still provide a fully functional and fully operational depot, but through that de-scoping, we can fully manage that budget.
Chairman, sorry to be a pain.
Councillor.
I see that the Birmingham Central Depot has to be vacated by December 2027. Can you convince me that if we started this, it's going to be finished? Because I don't think it will be.
So, I mean, one of the biggest hurdles is always planning. We're moving very quickly to get through to the planning stage, and that will be coming forward imminently, submitting the planning application. And we've had extensive engagement with Birmingham as the planning authority. So we're kind of looking to move through that hurdle as quickly as possible. The design itself and the building of a depot is not complicated. We've engaged with the wider market, we've engaged other operators who have gone through the process of building a new depot, and they're all happy that this is an aggressive but realistic timescale to build a depot and have it functional and operational in time for the BCC closure. We're going to have a stopgap measure anyway for several months to provide some parking for these services and provide a short-term solution. So we have, if worse comes to worse, we have some short-term mitigation measures that we can continue to do to provide service on the network.
Can I just ask, is that going to be an additional cost to the project itself? If you're having to find a stopgap, will the cost of that be factored in?
Well, so the cost gap would be down to National Express. So the depot is being provided in advance of the services which will be run from the Birmingham Central services being franchised. So that stopgap measure and the costs of doing it will be on the responsibility of National Express.
Councillor Mahmood.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I welcome this and understand the proposed is slightly more than what was initially envisaged by officers at BCC, but they're confident that they can meet the new area that you're looking at. And understand then they'll be entering into solid negotiations with yourselves once the funding has been approved by Cabinet next month. Probably to bring it into Cabinet March. Then we enter into the pre-election period, I think on the 20th or 21st of March. As you've said, and it's mentioned in the report, there is a 15% contingency plus inflation built into the project, which is, as members, we've always asked for us to hit the higher scale, which is 15%. And there's also another 4 million, which is from the wider bus depot projects that you've got, which is good news. The only question I had was similar to colleagues from Coventry also is obviously technology changes quite frequently over the space of time. And do you think that do we have any future liabilities built in to reflect changes in technology? For example, electricity, we may want to move to another sort of fueling system going forward, and this may become obsolete. Thank you.
Can I just clarify the question there? Are you asking, so in the report we set out that the depot itself is being built as an electric ready depot with a view that as soon as the services that run from the depot, they'll be electrified in 2029. Is the question then around electrification, or is it around a kind of wider point around technology with the depot?
That's possible move to hydrogen, isn't it?
If there's a major change in technology, electricity, we want to move away from electrification.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a good question. I think there's a lot of history here. So if we look across the UK and Europe, battery electric technology is by far the dominant technology, and then it's continuing to improve. So previously, issues like range and battery reliability were considered a problem. Those issues are increasingly diminishing and not being seen as an issue. The services that are running from that depot are well within the kind of the operational capability of a battery electric vehicle. We've also, we've been going through a hydrogen trial ourselves in the region with the 20 buses that were bought by Birmingham City Council and National Express. That trial has proved incredibly difficult. Some of the key issues coming out of that around securing affordable hydrogen for that fleet, and also having reliability of the refueling infrastructure that's needed. So ultimately, that trial has meant that we've got a whole chunk of buses which are not on the road today because of those challenges. We're also looking through the Zebra project. We've been previously looking at doing a large-scale hydrogen scheme within the region. Again, because of those issues that I just mentioned, that project did not progress. And these are things that are not just being seen within our part of the country. Other hydrogen projects around the country have also faced very similar challenges. So at this time, we're not ruling out hydrogen long term, but at this time, by far the optimal solution is seen as battery electric if we're moving towards zero emission buses.
Yeah, thank you. That was what I was effectively leading to, whether
right.
we're going to look at affordable hydrogen powered vehicles in the future if the price comes down. But you've said it's quite difficult now.
As Councillor Moden intimated, how flexible is the sort of planning of this in terms of, let's say within a couple of years, hydrogen became the fuel that everybody was going to use. How flexible is it to actually change over afterwards?
It comes down to the point of when we buy the buses. Obviously, once we've made the investment in the fleet, it's quite difficult to go back. Obviously, in terms of moving forward to electric, we need to secure the power now. That doesn't mean we could go back on that further down the time. There's always issues with hydrogen around kind of storage of it as a fuel. It is highly explosive as a fuel, so there's a lot of planning constraints that need to go in when you look to bring it forward. So I guess, in short, there's nothing stopping us looking at it again prior to making the investment in the fleet, but there are a lot of hurdles that would need to be overcome in order for it to be considered as a solution for this depot.
Councillor Bird.
The point is well made, and to be fair, if you were as old as me, you'd probably remember Betamax and VHS tape recorders. Here we got the same situation. The planning that you're putting forward should have that contingency if alternative fuels become available. And Councillor Moon's made a very good point. I'm not a fan of electric, as you'll probably know, but I'm a real diesel guy. But having said that, at this point in time, it seems to be putting everything to electric. But we need to have a contingency with this kind of outlay. You can't just say, well, it's going to be electric, because then when it proves that perhaps that isn't the way forward, or something changes, and things change really quickly in technology. I pick up my mobile phone now and I can do everything I used to do with a desktop computer. And that's changed in about 2 or 3 years, really. And the second point I want to make is, what is the current use of the land? I know the area, but I can't say I know this particular piece of land. Is it full of houses? Is it full of shops? Is it full of green? I don't know. Perhaps you can tell me, because that's another, you are assuming, far for me to say that you can assume, as chair of our planning committee, that the planning committee are going to approve this change of use from whatever the land is now. So perhaps you can tell me what the current land use is.
So it is currently a brownfield site. It's So currently brownfield. There's no buildings or anything on it. So it would be a site clearance and building a brand new depot from that brownfield shrub.
So as a brownfield site, then there's likely to be contamination. Have we done a ground survey yet?
Yes, ground surveys have been done and no contamination has been identified.
Okay. And the locality, Councillor Bird asked about the locality.
So it's not adjacent right now. It's not adjacent to any residential sites. There are a number of businesses over the road, but the immediate surroundings of the actual site are also brownfield and greenfield.
Well, the government of the day decides what our land is, whether it's green, brown or grey. And to be fair, what worries me, you mentioned quite rightly that hydrogen is explosive. Now, if you look, there is an exclusion zone in planning with regards to anything of that nature. And I refer back to a case some years back at Wolverhampton, where the college and the halls of residence were within the blast zone, if you like, of a business, which I won't name, which was mainly liquid petroleum gas. So these are things that have to be considered. And if they're not in the planning process already, they should be.
I think drawing the discussion together, I think that there's two main issues here, and I've got problems as to whether there'll be delays relating to the planning side of things. And I think the risk also lies in the budget, as we've already said. Councillor Burton.
I mean, I think if we don't approve it, then there's definitely got to be delays and there's definitely got to be budget close. I think the realistic thing is we've probably got to invest in the electric bus network. So I understand Councillor Burt's concern about hydrogen. I do get it, but I think the writing's on the wall that the region's probably got to go full in on electric. And we're making that decision in provision of that knowledge. And obviously we have to make decisions based on the information that's provided to us. Right. And if it looks as if the region are saying they've got to go all electric, then whether we believe it or not, I feel like that's the information provided to us and the information we have to trust in this case. I do get the budget growth thing, but I think this is one of those ones that if we don't at least try and get it off, it's definitely got a spiral. So, I mean, I'll be supporting it on that proviso, but I do understand the concerns of the room.
Can I just ask why this hasn't appeared sooner, so that we could have given it more thought?
Governance, that's why. It's the problem. It's not the first time they'll say it today, Pete.
Transport also.
Yeah, I'll agree with the statement there that's been made. I mean, we're working at a lot of pace here to try and develop a solution as quick as possible. So we've only within the last 6 months has the land opportunity really been identified. So when that opportunity was identified, we moved very quickly to engage with Birmingham to find out whether it was available for use for these purposes, which obviously they provisionally agreed, and we're going through negotiation on sale of the land. And in that time, we've then developed a design at pace through to RIBA stage 1, dealing with a lot of the issues around funding as well. So it's both the opportunity of the land coming forward and then also the money that's being used to support it. So as you'll see in the paper, it's a package of 3 different funding sources. So there's the Levelling Up Fund, which provides about half the money. There's also 5 million of CRSTS, and then the just over 4 million of CAF. So obviously those two, particularly the LUF Fund and CRSTS, are both time bound in terms of when they need to be committed and spent. So the various issues, obviously replacement of BC, the availability of land, and then the funding has all meant that we've had to move very quickly to put this proposal together, to develop a design solution and then bring it to yourselves for consideration.
Can I just ask at what stage you'll get some idea of the actual pricing?
So we'll need to move through to RIBA stage 2. That will take place over the next, the following design will take place over the next few months, at which point we'll then be able to go out to the market and secure pricing and offers for the build of the site.
When's that likely to be, please?
I'd have to come back and provide an answer to that. I think Joe will know better than I.
I'm just thinking maybe we ought to revisit this. I mean, we'll go through the approval stage, but we'd certainly want to know what the pricing comes out at. Perhaps in June, possibly.
Yeah. So are we looking to defer the decision till June? Is that the?
No, that's not what I said. I would probably want some more detail in June, so that we know whether we've made a mistake or not in terms of pricing. Does that make sense?
Someone else will take
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Happy to have good visibility on this and to bring it back in June.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I took on the transport portfolio in Birmingham May 24 now. I was briefed then about this, so I am disappointed with the pace on this particular project. terms of valuations, obviously the city council has to go to cabinet first for approval of the funding, because a lot of it's coming from the levelling up fund that we've got in the city council. Then valuation would have to be agreed both from the combined authority and the city council as well, because we have to, as a city council, we would have to ensure that we get best value for the citizens of the city as well. And you would want to do the same here as a combined authority. But my concern is the pace. If we did defer it today, we're losing so much time on this, because the depot is going to close, I think, end of next year. Planning can be notoriously slow in the city council, depending on how many objections we get, representations made. So not approving today is not an option for me. It has to. My question was more around flexibility of different fuels going forward, because say this depot is operational next year, December, so you're hitting into 2028 then. By then technology moves so fast. And I remember my first mobile phone, it was just a small pidgey little thing. Now it's like Councillor Bird has said, it's like a laptop. It's the same thing. So hydrogen, what we've been told, will come down in price significantly over the next 2-3 years. Who knows? By then we may say it's more efficient for us to have hydrogen fueled vehicles. But stopping this now is not an option. We need to approve it today. So that, and remember, you'll have due diligence anyway at Birmingham City Council through the cabinet process, and obviously we've got commissioners who have to oversee all reports as well. So there'll be more checks and balances on this. But and the price would be agreed, which represents best value for both City Council and the combined authority.
Suggest September. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I'd suggest if the board are happy with it, that a report back in September on progress gives you the best opportunity to check things, because at that point you should have more current certainty and planning should have been received, and that would answer your queries. I think personal experience in real estate is that June might be a little early to give you a definitive answer, especially if you're thinking, taking the point about governance, that you probably need about 6 weeks lead in before you actually get to board of preparation of papers, and they'll go through. That if you say June, you're really looking at kind of start of May potentially, kind of for preparing. It doesn't seem a long time to give you the update detail that I think the board is looking for. So it's just a suggestion about it being September.
Okay. I think with the reservations that we've got about price and whether planning will be easy and the delays that might bring, can we go to the recommendations? Is everybody happy with approving recommendations 1 to 5 on page 41? Yeah.
Can I just record in the minutes, we've been given an assurance this will be completed to be operational by December 2027.
Yeah, I think I would want it minuted, the reservation that we have and that one. Yeah, timescales, the other one. Yeah.
And I think in September, if I may, Chairman, if it's coming back in September, hopefully I'll still be here. It must contain up-to-date costings and timescales.
Yes.
And any conditions in planning that could impose a difficulty.
That's good, Mike. Thanks. We'll have that minuted, but at this stage we're approving the recommendations on page 41. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Apologies, Chair. Could I just make a clarification? So as set out in the paper, we're saying this: the current programme is for completion by April 2028, not December 2027.
You're already backsliding, Mike. Bloody hell.
So what you're saying is there will be a stopgap requirement regardless.
Yeah.
It may be useful for you to come back in September to give us some indication as to what that stopgap, because you're going to have to plan for that as well, aren't you?
My apologies.
Yeah.
Quite right, it does say that. December 2027 is when the old depot has to be vacated. So we'll record that as April 2028. All right.
Thank you, Chair.
Just on that, if the depot has to be vacated by December of next year, and this depot will be completed by April, what happens the following year? What happens in the 4-month period?
So you got a fallback position.
You've been doing a lot of walking, Majid. That's what you've been doing.
Anyway, thank you, Elliot. As you can see, we've got concerns, but it's been
They did
approved.
say
So,
that continuous express will
Thank you.
cover
Fully understood. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.
based on the days.
I love the play, but I want to play. It's the village.
Again, we'll then go on to agenda item 9, which is the local electric vehicle infrastructure capital fund project. It was meant to be delivered by Stan Deep, is it?
So,
Andrew, sorry.
That's fine.
I do apologise.
That's fine. Morning all. Thank you, Chair. Morning all. So I'm Andrew Page. I work in the Transport Innovation team for Mike Waters in the Technology Directorate. Just to give you a short overview of the proposal. So we were fortunate enough in the West Midlands to be allocated 14.5 million grant funding from government for public electric vehicle infrastructure, primarily aimed at local residents and businesses. Some of your authorities will be familiar with this type of infrastructure because you've been busy delivering some of it through other funding streams. So from that date, so this is around beginning of 2024, we took part in a 3-stage process with Department for Transport and the Office for Zero Emission Vehicles, who are awarding the grant funding, to follow their 3-stage process for setting out how we'd utilise that funding. And the ambition, definitely from government, is to leverage maximum amounts of private sector funding to go into this charge infrastructure. Historically, it's been sort of 50-50, aiming for more like 80% or more of private sector funding into this infrastructure. And we crunched the numbers, very much working with local authority officer colleagues right the way through the process. And our ambition is for around 9,500 charging spaces as a result of the funding that's been made available. So as I say, last 2 years we've worked virtually on a weekly basis with local authority officers, developing the specifications for the proposal. CA side, we've been working on business case specifically as well. So we achieved outline business case approval a couple of months ago. We're now in the process of drafting the full business case. Following the approval of our draft contract documents specification by DfT, we're now in the middle of a procurement process. So bids closed about 3 weeks ago. So we're in the middle of assessing tender returns. And that process will continue for the next month or so, possibly longer. In terms of revenue generation, the charge points will generate revenue. The revenue will be shared with local authorities according to the locations of the charge points that are going to be installed. We're very much expecting local authorities to support the process for identified locations with the suppliers. We're looking for an equitable spread across our wards and districts across the West Midlands. Government sees this as very much being infrastructure slightly ahead of demand. So as people transition to EV, that infrastructure is there for them to use on their street, or in a car park, or in a park and ride site. Yes, so the recommendations are at the top of the report. We do know there are lots of these types of procurements happening across the UK at the moment. So the suppliers are quite stretched in terms of submitting their responses to those tender returns. So we are keen to keep moving forward with this, and that's why the recommendations are set out as they are. We're hoping to get mobilisation with the suppliers from sort of April, May onwards, with a 5-year delivery window. The exact volumes of charge points will be agreed with the suppliers, and it's subject to their tender returns. So that's one of the areas that they're competing on, is what they're able to provide alongside the grant funding that's being made available to them. So yes, happy to take any questions.
Councillor O'Brien.
So thank you, Chair. I do have a number of real concerns about this. And it goes back to the previous conversation, actually, the previous report. The problem here is the top slicing. It's also the governance. It's the fact that none of us have had any input into this report. I haven't seen any elected member input into this report until today. And it raises a huge amount of questions of transparency. And I say that because in Coventry, of course, we work directly through DFT, the Office for Zero Emission Vehicles, and achieved the fact over 2,500 electric charge points already on our city streets. And we've done that, but whilst not top slicing one single penny piece in order to pay for people to come up with agreements and legal contracts that are already in place that we have and can deliver. So there's a real concern around that. The second point is, and by the way, 2% works out at about £300,000. That's hundreds of thousands of pounds going out directly for delivery in order to support staff in this organisation. And I don't think that's right. I really don't, when we've already shown that we can do that in Coventry. But if I say that, and I've raised this before, Chair, that in terms of getting grant funding agreements, in terms of getting agreements of how we spend money with the Combined Authority, has proved challenging to the point where it's actually become dysfunctional and it's not working properly. And only in the last couple of years, Coventry City Council alone had at least 10 grant funding agreements that were held up for 6 weeks because the relevant officer was off sick for 6 weeks. Nobody picked up their work. It meant massive delays in the system. There were other funding agreements coming through that then further made those situations more difficult, which means decisions couldn't be taken. And if it wasn't for Coventry, and I can't speak for other authorities, making decisions that we would spend our own money and start the schemes early before the grant funding agreements were in place, those schemes wouldn't have been achieved on the timescales that were set quite specifically by the Combined Authority. So in effect, they were holding up delivery. And I'm afraid this report here today further underpins that bureaucracy is going to hold up frontline delivery of service and of projects, and that's not acceptable. And I've got to say, Chair, and I will say it again, I'm not accepting any of these recommendations that gives further power to, and I don't take this personally, Andrew, right, to local, to Combined Authority officers who are not accountable to the public to go away and spend £300,000 to recruit people to hold up projects. That's not acceptable. And the only way we can do this, I expect, and I say I won't be supporting this today, but I expect that we have, we agree a streamlined process whereby we actually have fewer steps involved in order to bring forward these agreements. There's a standard grant funding agreement where 90% of almost all these agreements are the same. But every time you do this, they start from square one. And that's what holds it up. And that if the Combined Authority doesn't fulfil its obligations in a set period of time, and that money is refunded to the relevant authority who's delivering it. So, and the fourth thing is delegate to the Executive Director of Transport for West Midlands in consultation with the Section 73 officer and monitoring officer the approval of the full business case. No word of elected people in this. So I find this unsupportable from Coventry's point of view. So I won't be supporting it. And the final point to make is, as part of the Rosewell review, which does recommend streamlining, and this has taken no account of this whatsoever, I've been asking for recommendations brought forward for governance improvements within the Combined Authority, and they put it off to July. That is unacceptable. In the meantime, this is coming through, and we're expected to just nod it through like a load of nodding donkeys. I won't do that. So, quite frankly, this is unacceptable, and it needs to be gone away. And actually, a proper process is brought back to us so that we, as elected people, have proper oversight of what is going on and where public money is being spent.
Andrew, do you want to address?
I'm not going to comment on governance processes because I don't think that's that's not
No,
my
there's
position
some
to
of
comment on that.
If you could address
In
some
terms
of
of,
Councillor Abbott's points.
I think the top slide, are you referring to the management fees in paragraph? I think it is
It's a £300,000 council reference.
3,000. I'm looking for that reference in the report to £3,000. But so the contract with suppliers will be managed by the combined authority. So we require an accounts manager to manage those contracts with those suppliers. Yeah, that is a cost. We have a project manager that's going to be costed, and we also need to manage the finances flows that are coming through from the suppliers direct and then back. Revenue, any revenue that's generated flows back to those local authorities. So we need to employ staff to make sure you get your revenue back to your local authorities once the charge points are up and running. There isn't, in terms of the funding itself, the 14.5 million will be utilised with the suppliers. So there's no direct grant funding going to local authorities. So as each charge point is installed, they'll make a claim for that element of grant that relates to that charge point. So say it could be, say in terms of their tender returns, they say they need, say, £1,500 or £2,000 grant to go towards that location. They will put that claim to us. We will manage that finance flow, and then we will refund the supplier that £2,000. So local authorities aren't directly involved in those flows of finances.
Councillor Bird.
Chairman, I have to say that the success of electrification in Coventry is something that we should have, in my view, traded upon and found out what problems they've encountered and how they've overcome them. It seems to me, and I presume these are going to be on-street charging points as well as perhaps pieces of land.
Yeah.
Well, my experience to date, and I'll put my version of electric to one side, I think there were 2 or 3 of these proposed in Walsall. And the outcry from the resident, "Oh, I don't want that outside my door," because it means that sometimes their car is parked outside their door all day or whatever. So they are left there charging, right? The other thing is, I think we need to look at security of how the cables are not get nicked as they do, because they're quite valuable. But I do believe that certainly Councillor Bowles made a very good point. There is a circumventation, if that's a word, I've just made it up. Political circumventation, if you like, where we don't have any handle on what's been spent here anymore, not just here, but across the whole of the combined authority. That's not your problem. That's the governance of the way the combined authority is working. But this is such, I mean, it says here, quite rightly, executive summary, to give immediate authority to draw down 40.5 million to enable the delivery of electrical vehicle network. It then says members of the investment board recommend to also delegate authority to the executive director of transport to approve the full business case. That's where the elected members should be involved in looking at that business case, because I used to have a chief exec when things went wrong, and he used to say to me, "I'm sorry." I said, "Sorry, doesn't cut it today. You've still got a job, but we lose seats because we get held accountable for the failures and the successes of local authorities and indeed the combined authority." And so therefore, that's where Jim's coming from. It's the accountability that we have to take when in actual fact we haven't been involved in the decision-making process until this very late stage. And then we've been told, well, okay, thanks very much. You approved the idea, we'll go away and bring it forward. But Andrew, it's not against you. It's the way things are working, which we find uncomfortable.
It is. I could have used the crude terminology, but it's a chicken and egg situation here, isn't it? That normally we would be provided with the business case to spend the money, not the other way around. We've been asked to approve the spend of quite a significant amount of money with the business case coming afterwards. So I think that there is a concern there. I think I'd also have concern about, you're talking about the equitable spread. Councillor Arbor already stated that they have 2,000 EV chargers in Coventry already through,
2,500.
through,
2,500.
2,500, even more, through the green funding that you've achieved. And that's 2,500 of 4,000. Where we likely to find the other 1,500, majority of them, I'd imagine in Birmingham, would have been right.
Well, obviously Birmingham's the biggest authority, so there's
Yeah.
going to be more demand from the suppliers to install charge points
I th-
where they're
I think-
required. Yeah,
I think where I'm coming from is you're talking about equitable spread. If there's a lack of EV charging in the Black Country,
Yeah.
then the equitable spread has got to sort of adjust that, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Am I right?
yeah. In terms of equity, I'm talking about equity to communities. So maybe poorer neighbourhoods that generally suppliers wouldn't seek to install chargers in immediately until take-up is maybe further down the line in those communities. Looking to install chargers in those areas to encourage that take-up and give everybody the opportunity. So that's what talk about equitable rather than necessarily an even spread. It's around equity for those communities. That's the response.
So we would be.
The problem I have with that, Chairman, is that when you look at areas of deprivation, they tend to be terrace properties, and therefore putting out these outside. I mean, you fight for a place in some of the streets in Warsaw. You know, I mean, it is that bad at times. I would have thought within this strategy, perhaps we should have looked at EV charging stations, like a petrol station, like diesel, but dedicated to, the way I see it in my head, is to have dedicated charging with, I don't know, cafe, shop, whatever you like, where somebody can spend an hour and a half or, you know, an hour or half an hour, whatever it takes to charge an electric vehicle, so that people can drive to a charging point, go and have a cup of coffee or whatever, and drive away. I think I wouldn't want to be the contractor installing them in terrace streets, because within the report it says about, I don't know whether you've got over the problem in Coventry, Jim,
Yeah.
about channels on the pavement.
And all that.
We're still having issues
But
with that.
in areas of high deprivation, somebody lives on the 12th floor of a block of flats. That's a bloody long cable.
Yes.
I
No,
think,
we sort of go and just
I think
check.
the suggestion that you've talked about with shops and supermarkets and things like that that's already happening anyway.
Yeah, no, sorry, Chairman, a dedicated space, if you like. Instead of a petrol station, you have an electrical vehicle station with a couple of just, you know, a cafe or something.
I think the point is, Chair, is that, you know, there's a whole raft of ways to do this. You know, we've been in discussion with the Combined Authority about exactly what you've talked about there. You know, we also talk about the fact that actually bringing it closer to where people live and understanding what restrictions or otherwise would potentially be in place in order for people to still be able to park in their roads. So, for example, I would never have said, I haven't said in Coventry that if there are electric charge points, only electric vehicles can park there until the quantum reaches a certain point whereby actually, you know, the balance has changed in terms of the number of people who own electric vehicles versus the number of people who own, you know, internal combustion or diesel engines, and that is happening slowly but surely. It will happen eventually. There will be a pivot, but it's about taking people with us. That's the whole point of this. That's why I'm very careful about how you have an oversight of this. You don't tell people what they must do. You don't restrict people what they can do. You give people choice about what they should do. That's the whole point of it. But that's a slightly different issue from what I've raised today, because the point I come back to is that actually we have all these agreements in place. We've worked with Charge, we've worked with all these other companies, and they've delivered for us, and we've got these contracts, we've got these agreements all in place. And the Combined Authority are asking for £300,000 to be top sliced in order to agree that, with no guarantees of how they will do that, when they will do that, and they put service delivery at risk. That is unacceptable. And it's because there's no governance in place to oversee it. So I'll come back to the point, unless there is a proper governance in place, no one's talked to Coventry about it, by the way, and we're the experts on this. No one outside of London's got more than we have, and we've done it, we've shown, we've proved we can do it. I'm not prepared to give that power over to organisation that is not transparent in what they're doing and how they're spending their money. And we've got experience of other projects that have been put at risk because of exactly this same problem. So it will happen again. It's because there's no governance in place. I keep saying it.
Andrew?
So we've been speaking to Shamala. Shamala's part of our working group
Yes, I know you have.
for the last 2 years. So we've been speaking to Shamala right the way through, and we've used her experience in terms of drafting specification, as we have with other local authorities.
You still want £300,000 for the
If-
privilege?
EV officers. No, well,
If you do. So it's not, you know, you can say
I
what you
think-
like, that's what you're doing.
so in terms of incorporating the experience from Coventry, that's incorporated within the specification and the proposals that have been undertaken. So we know what works well in Coventry. We know it works well if you don't put charges outside people's front door.
Here's what I
to your
propose,
location.
Chair. If the command authority are committing to not top slicing one single penny of the delivery of this £14.5 million, I'll support it. It has to be in the paper. Otherwise, I'm not supporting it. It's as simple as that.
Would it be acceptable, and I don't know what the timescales for Andrew are, usually when government are trying to deploy money, they're usually quite quick.
Exactly. That's the
And you
point.
want the delivery
Yeah.
quite quickly. Would it be acceptable to park the 300,000 subject to coming back and justifying why that's in, deploy the remainder apart from that, but only either the 300,000 gets dedicated into the charging infrastructure later on because you don't agree with the costs, but remains kind of unspent for now? Would that be an acceptable solution to move forward?
What I'm asking is that officers of the CA sit down with my officers, right, and agree a way forward in line with what I said here about a streamlined process that they've had conversations with, particularly at STOG, and it's them that have written this for me, and they come back to me and say, we've told them all this, they're still doing it regardless of what we say. So I'm having to raise it as the elected member here because we are not being listened to. And I'm tired of this. It's gone on now for 2 years. That's the point. They go away and agree that, and my officers back at Coventry recommend support of it. I'll support it. But at the moment, they're telling me we can't because you are putting project delivery at risk, because you are holding it back because of your timescales.
Could I ask, Councillor Albor, you would see being delivered? If you know, with obviously part of the 300,000, how would you see this being delivered in any other way?
I would happily recommend that Coventry be the accountable body rather than the CA, because that's how we've done it over the last few years. And we used to be the accountable body for the local enterprise partnership, where we delivered exactly this sort of thing, millions, tens of hundreds of millions of pounds of public money. Now, I know we can't do that today, but I'm not prepared, I keep saying it, I'm not prepared to accept that when my officers come back to me and say we're not being listened to, they're not taken on board, you are building up a situation in the Combined Authority where there are more and more people being taken on the payroll to take money from frontline service delivery. That's as simple as that. I can't say it any clearer.
I think I know where you're coming from completely, Councillor Albor. Councillor Mahmood?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've been trying to get in earlier, but I know Councillor Boyle is quite emotional about this. You can
All
have
right,
change
sir.
this.
You know more about it than us.
So Birmingham also has electric vehicle strategy as well. We've delivered 560 street lampposts with electric charging. There's been a handful of complaints where people have said that it restricts their traffic, especially in the more deprived areas that we've been targeting to give people that outlet as well. But on the whole, it's been quite successful. There's been quite a lot of good feedback on this, and this would be an extension of that is with the private operator as well. But the concern I welcome the funding, and I've got no issue if the Combined Authority is going to be delivering this on behalf of the council, because there is a management charge that will be attributable to all councils depending on the number of charges that they have. My concern is around take-up of this. What if the take-up isn't as expected and the management charge then isn't as high as we expect within the councils? And secondly, if say, for example, the companies walk away from this because it's not working, who carries the ultimate financial responsibility for the infrastructure that's then been installed into our local authorities?
Yeah, there's in the contract documentation, it's clearly set out the sort of legal implications of any suppliers walking away or attempting to walk away from their contracts or their commitments. So that is covered off, and we've gone through that with our lawyers and our procurement team. So we're satisfied that we're covered by that. And again, local authority officers have had an opportunity to contribute to the development of those contracts and specifications.
Chairman,
Councillor
it seems to me to be, if Jim is saying that Coventry be the accountable body, that seems to me to be pretty much a way forward. I'll ask Member a question, he may not have an answer. Had the combined authority called upon your expertise in Birmingham about rolling this out? They don't appear to have been speaking to Coventry. And, you know, I'm a Philistine when it comes to electrics, especially. It's not a double act today by me and Jim, but I do think he's making a very good point. But why wouldn't you have somebody who knows the pitfalls to be the accountable body? And if that's the way forward to get this strategy going forward, why wouldn't you do it?
I presume the administration, if Coventry were to take that on, you know, some of the 300,000 that's been put aside for it to be administered here, part of that money would have to be, presumably, you'd need extra officers at Coventry to fulfil it as well. So are we just moving where the cost
we
is?
have a dedicated net zero team and some very highly qualified officers within transport. I'm not aware that they have been approached, because if they had been approached, someone would have briefed me on this report. So I'm not sure that they have been approached, but we have got significant experience in the delivery of electric charging on the streets. So I would have thought that would have been standard, although the money does come to you via the Local Government Act, which is fine. But you would have thought that would have been good practice to speak to officers who've already delivered.
You see, for us, we're in a completely different position. I would imagine Walsall are the same, and Wolverhampton no. It's been very piecemeal in Sandwell. It's not been right wide ranging like in your two authorities. There's been some money coming down, and we've been trying to find places where they can be installed. But that's about it. In terms of our own assets, we've been doing the same. But I would imagine what Walsall, Wolverhampton, I think the Black Country has been in a completely different situation to Coventry and Birmingham. And we've got less of the knowledge base there, of course, as well. We're still wrangling with the issue of the ducting under the footpaths that would have to occur in certain places, yeah. And you've resolved it, presumably, so.
There's loads of, I mean, at the risk of getting into discussion about, because there's loads of different solutions to particular issues. So not one size fits all is the point. You know, but again, that's that's a slightly different point from what I just want to put forward today. So I'm not going to say it again.
I think what you're saying is, apart from the knowledge, the practicalities, you've gone through
We were being
had the pain of going through those.
We were being approached by OZEV because they could not spend the money, because they couldn't get enough local authorities to take the money forward to deliver the schemes they wanted to. So we went and we did it. And I recognised and made sure we had certain caveats in place so that we took people with us rather than pitch one driver against another. And that's why we've done it. And I've not had one single complaint in Coventry at all about it, because it's just about future proofing, simply put. That's what it is. It's a really simple scheme to deliver, and I'm shocked that we have to go through this in order to deliver it. That's the problem I've got.
Would you see us having delivery agents in each local authority if you were to be the accountable body?
What I would ask is, as I said before, that I would ask that those officers sit down with my officers and they come forward with a recommendation that we can accept. At the moment, the recommendation is acceptable from our perspective. That's the point. And I think they can achieve that if the combined authority officers listen and stop trying to build up their own, if you like, numbers of people to support themselves. That's what's happening, I'm afraid.
Is that not tautologically the point of the CA in some senses, that we're meant to be centralising and pooling these resources? I'm not familiar. Hands up, I'm not familiar with Coventry's rollout of EVs. It's not been my responsibility to be. I can only take what you said, but
I'm aware of it.
I can only imagine that. I mean, I don't think this board has the power to volunteer Coventry to administer these things. I don't imagine we have that power. Obviously, we've not asked Coventry if they even could do it. But I imagine even if we did ask Coventry if they could do it, it would probably cost more than £300,000 to set Coventry up to do it, to administer it, to then put agents within all of the boroughs. I imagine that would cost far in excess of £300,000 if we were to attempt to do it that way. So I can't see what the advantage would be in doing that. And I feel like we can't, I understand why it's been brought up, but I feel like we can't discuss it as an imaginary future proposal that I don't have written in front of us. I can only assess the information that I've been given, so I can't comment on any of that. So I don't know what everyone else on the board's thinking on which way this vote's got to go. But we're not coming from with any opposition from Wolverhampton officers. We've raised no objection to this. I think I've been advised by my officer team to accept the recommendation, but I think there is a sort of, I think lots of what we're raising here is stemming from a distrust of the governance system rather than a distrust in the paper. I don't know if that's me misdiagnosing this. Please correct me if it is, but I think, and on the previous paper, it's a distrust in the administration rather than in the content of the paper. And obviously that's why I feel not necessarily qualified to comment on it, because maybe Wolverhampton's experienced a better relationship with the CA and we don't have that intrinsic distrust. I don't know, but I can only assess what's in the paper, and indicatively, should this go to a vote, I'll be supporting it. But obviously I'm willing to listen to my colleagues on this.
I think we're in a difficult situation here with Councillor O'Ball for being so strongly about it, and I'm just wondering whether a deferral might be better, so that we can get some bringing of minds together, if you know what I mean, with a more joined together approach. Does that make sense?
Chairman, first of all, there's somebody indicated on the screen. I don't think a defer is the right thing to do. You can wrap this up with some kind of addition to the resolution to enable the officers to look at the governance of this, and in actual fact look at whether, to use Chris's words, whether in actual fact Coventry could assist. We don't appear to be tapping into the expertise they've got, is what I'm saying. But there's a lady indicated on the screen.
Anna, you want to come in?
Hi, my name is Hannah. I work with Andy. I just wanted to really quickly clarify one point, and that was a reference to the top slice of £300,000. I just wanted to clarify that actually we won't be taking a top slice from the grant funding. The grant funding conditions don't actually allow for that. The management charge, I think, might be what is being referred to here, will be taken from any revenue that comes into to the local authorities. So that's where those roles will be covered.
Can you just explain the revenues going into the local authorities, and then we'll be paying the combined authority?
It's the same thing.
Is that what you're saying?
So yeah, the revenue that will be generated from the usage of the charge points, there will be a percentage of that towards covering the costs of the roles. We do have some other capability funding as well from government that will also be used towards the management charge. And capability funding is also being used to cover roles in all the local authorities. So the ULEV group that meets weekly with the combined authority, who has been meeting to draft and to shape all the paperwork that has gone into the ITT, some of their roles is being also covered by the Levi capability funding.
Chair.
Right.
So I would be against deferring the report. I mean, this is about drawing down 14.5 million of government funding. Why would we want to defer it? In the previous report, we were all complaining about the fact that the report hasn't come to us soon enough. Now we've got a report, and the officers has explained the management charge, which I'm quite comfortable with. I don't have an issue with it.
I think we had the reason I was suggesting deferral was that we've got a big concern from at least one of us around the table that there hasn't been sufficient sort of joint working going on and concerns about the governance. So that was why I was suggesting deferral. If people around the table think it should go through, but with an amendment, as Councillor Bird suggested, then
can I just, because I did read out 3 things that I wanted, right?
Yeah.
So I'm
Okay.
hoping they'll be minuted. I'll read them again. So there's a streamlined process whereby funding is allocated on a similar basis to the highway maintenance programmes with fewer steps needed to be taken to release the funding. Number 1. Number 2, a standard grant funding agreement whereby only the scheme details and the award value need to be inputted. 90% of the agreement should be the same clauses irrespective of the individual nature of the scheme. And then thirdly, a service level agreement whereby the combined authority commits to turning around business cases in a set period of time. If this isn't met, then local authorities should have a rebate on the 2% top slice. In other words, the management fee that they're charging. Because they're giving you money to then pay them back for delivering those business cases. If the business cases aren't on time, they then put the whole delivery in jeopardy. And that is why we've seen a number of, because quite frankly, colleagues, there's been a number of grant fund agreements with the combined authority as part of the devolution that has not been spent. And you can see it in all the bloody things where they're way behind on delivery because of agreements have not been put in place in time. And I can go on about this all day long, particularly with segregated cycleways. And that is why they haven't been taking them up. It's because of this. So I'm asking that is put in place. That's all. It's not difficult. And if combined authorities don't want to do that, that tells me a lot that they do not want to engage with authorities in a meaningful way.
Andrew.
Just for this project specifically, there are no grant agreements between the local authority and the combined authorities. And secondly, we're not charging local authorities anything for development of the business cases. So that's the outline business case or the full business case.
Correct. You just heard what Hannah said. So that's just not correct.
The management fees for the operation of the contract with the suppliers. That's dealing with the suppliers directly as the contracts are installed and managed and operated over that course of the concession period.
And we've got those in place already.
Those are for different contracts, not for the.
So, bureaucracy rules again at the combined authority. I'm saying less. I'm saying nothing more about it. I've said what I've said. I won't be supporting it.
Councillor Bird, you gave an amendment to or an extra recommendation.
Well, basically, I think it needs some political oversight. And in actual fact, although we seem to have conflicting reports about this 300,000 quid, I think that needs to be satisfied. I think we should agree the drawdown of the money, but in actual fact, certain assurances raised in this meeting should be given to all elected members who are sitting here today.
And Chair, there should be a commitment to engage with officers at both Birmingham and
Coventry, definitely.
Andrew's saying that they have, I presume.
Sorry, I missed that question. Was it around the officers?
Yeah, the commitment to engage with the officers around the operations.
Yeah, so in Birmingham City Council, we've been speaking to Paul Herders and Stephen, the Clean Air Zone team, and we've been talking to them for the last 2 years. So, again, with all the officers across.
So I assume that means you would commit to continue that conversation. I support what Mike's just passed as an amendment.
Yeah.
We just don't want duplication of work because they may be doing some work on this anyway through our electrical switch.
I always relate it back to environmental health. If you've got a dodgy meat pie in Wolverhampton and you've got a dodgy meat pie in Walsall and you've got a dodgy meat pie in Birmingham, the legislation is still the same and the experience is shared. That's what we're trying to get to.
I can just say we've been using all the experience of all the local authority officers across the West Midlands for the last 5 years. I think we've had the working group, so we've
got a
right the way
different
through.
arrangement in Walsall, as you know, I'm sure.
Yeah, with Black Country Transport, so utilising the officers.
If there's a working group set up, that's fine. Chair.
I think we need to then pull this together. Wendy, you've got the wording that Councillor Bird is suggesting.
Well, he's wanting political oversight and to continued commitment to engage with the local authority officers.
Yeah. And share experience in relation to contracts, particular. Yeah. Are we happy with that then?
Agreed.
So can I just
Just-
confirm, you're only agreeing the first one, you're not agreeing 2 and 3?
Are we agreeing the delegation to?
Because councillor O'Boyle.
I won't support, I'm not supporting giving them power to do that, it's just
So
wrong.
it was only the first one.
I wouldn't be here unless the officers that are allegedly been engaged with are telling me something different, that's the point. I'm come here just to cause trouble, I'm telling you what officers sitting on Stog, their response their responses have been, that's it.
Are we saying that we want to see the
It's
full
not
business?
acceptable.
Are we saying that we want to see the full business cases back here for approval rather than the delegation?
We don't have to pass this in unanimity, do we?
No, it's
This is just a simple majority vote.
Can I just say, Chairman, Jim knows more about this than me. I know bugger all about electric vehicles. I hear you've got trams in some parts of the borough, but I don't know. Could I just say, I mentioned political oversight. Would Jim be happy to be that political oversight? If he says no, I won't be offended, but he knows more about this than most, you know, and I think that his officers would be in a better position if he were that political oversight. If it means you get it over the line, then, you know, with political oversight, I'll be happy.
What's the role of the Transport for West Midlands Scrutiny?
That is the bloody point, isn't it? There isn't any, this is the point. That's why I'm raising it, I've been raising it for 2 years. I'm not saying anything different, and sorry if I sound like a broken record. This is all about officials, talking to officials, that's it. And I'm tired of it. And this is public money we're talking about, by the way.
Can I just try and bring this to a close? Can I just ask, is there a majority agreement to accept the 3 recommendations here with Councillor Bird's amendment? Councillor Clark? Is he there?
He doesn't get to vote, does he?
He can't vote, but he can give his
That-
opinion.
I'm just trying to get
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Councillor Clark?
That was only possible during COVID.
He's fell asleep.
Sorry, Chair, I am here. I do apologise.
Actually,
What's your thinking? You've listened to quite a bit of a debate there. I said
I
we
know.
weren't go on too long with these agenda items, but it appears
They are going on. I think I'm sort of siding with Councillor Bird here.
okay. Thank you. So it's can we take a vote on accepting the 3 recommendations on page 69 with Councillor Bird's amendment?
Would you be more comfortable if we took a named vote so you could clearly cast against it?
Jim can record his vote on the Local
I'm-
Government Act
I'm-
1972.
I'm happy
Do you
to
wish
take a
to?
name vote, yeah.
But I do believe that, you know, the political oversight would be better if it were to be Coventry, as Jim knows more about it than us. But he makes a very good point. The governance issue is not just on this particular issue, it is endemic within the combined.
It is across the board, yeah. So we're going to have to take a proper vote on this. Those in favour of what I've just stated. You can't, Councillor Clark. So that's been accepted. Then obviously we'll try and. I think Andrew, you've heard the concerns here. I think you've got to really try and address those. It would be good if you could come back with some reassurance in relation to governance. When do you think you could do that for?
Yeah, I'll confirm back through to the Secretary when we think we can do that. But yeah, I mean, the governance issue is slightly out of my sphere of influence, so I'll take further advice from the governance team as to what we should be doing there.
So just to clarify, Chair, then, Councillor O'Boyle is in agreement with the first one, and in relation to the second and third, are you wanting political oversight of those 2? So that is
Totally, that's,
yes,
Absolutely.
yes. So
and I'd say that about every single report that
Yes.
comes before us.
So how you record that is it's separately, presumably. We're all agreeing to 1 to 3, and with the amendment for Councillor O'Boyle's only agreeing to recommendation 1. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
That's fair enough.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
That was the easy one. I'll wait to the next.
We go on to agenda item 10 then, which is sprint purchase of vehicles, the full business case. Martin Pine and Elliot Waller.
Thank you, Chair. Yep, I'm just going to share presentation very swiftly. Hope you can see that. Yeah, is that showing? Perfect, thank you. Okay, so we're here today to talk about Sprint Vehicles full business case. Just to rewind, we're just seeking endorsement for this to go forward to the CA board in March, and endorsement from investment panel, investment board. So WMCA board has previously approved Sprint infrastructure spending on the corridor between Walsall and Solihull, and then subsequently allocated 26 million through CRSTS to fund the vehicle fleet in May 25. And then the CA board approved the bus fleet strategy in January 26, which included the Sprint vehicles. Prior to the CA board approval to the Sprint infrastructure business cases, the Sprint standards were approved at the ITA back pre the CA days as well. And in terms of kind of the program headlines, we're looking to complete the Sprint delivery, if you like, with this investment, delivering transformative, sustainable electric tram-style buses on the corridor, and improving accessibility and access to opportunities throughout the corridor. Just to remind people, Sprint standards and the intent of the Sprint scheme is to provide a tram-like service on the corridor and really deliver a step change in public transport provision. And in terms of delivery of the infrastructure, I'd say we are approximately 70% through the delivery program, with the last bits being delivered over the next year and a half. And obviously the final element to this is the vehicles depot and ticketing solution, which is subject to this business case. And we're hoping to launch the service in line with franchising start in October 2027. Elliot, do you want to pick up? Oh. Can you hear me?
Be good if they were in the room.
Is Elliot?
I hate it.
I'm back now.
Okay.
Really?
Sorry, over to me, Martin.
Yeah, please.
Apologies, my internet dropped out. Apologies, I haven't been able to make it into the room today. So just to set out the kind of key points and a summary of the recommendation. So we are seeking to procure 24 tram-like battery electric articulated buses, and the budget also covers the supporting depot alterations and charging infrastructure for that fleet. Overall, the business case seeks approval for just over £31 million, and that's comprised of £26 million of CRSTS, which has already been £26 million made up of CRSTS and Zebra, and then a further 5.5 million of CRSTS alone for the ticketing infrastructure. So there's still work to be done around the final ticketing option, whether that's a combination of pay the driver, rear border lighting, or the preferred option, which is fully off board, aligned with the Metro solution. So as Martin says, it'll be a transformational BRT system for the corridor and offering that tram-like experience, but through the lower cost option of bus technology. We spent 158 million today, and we're targeting a rollout of the Sprint services alongside the first franchise contract in October 2027. So to support that, we're seeking recommendations to WMCA board of approving the full business case for the vehicles, approve the spend, the 20.5 million of CRSTS and 5.4 million of Zebra funding, approving that spend and entering into contracts at the appropriate time, delegating that authority to the exec director of TFWM. Noting that there's further work to be done on the buy before new board ticketing option, with detailed design to come, and the authority to approve that, and the spending will again be delegated to the executive director of TFWM. If there's any questions in the room, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Any questions? He said you got something on this report as well. I think
It's almost the easy one.
I was thinking, Mike's all his dreams have come true, you know.
No, they should have been ready before the Commonwealth Games.
Well, I know, but I mean, you know, better late than never, I suppose.
I was on the scrutiny board when they were talking about it.
Chairman.
No, I'm fully supportive of this. I don't have a problem, you know. And quite frankly, crack on with it as far as I'm concerned. As long as we crack on with CVLR, that's what I'm bothered about. Because that's the game changer here, not this old technology that Walsall want. But fair enough, happy enough with it for them.
I never watched it in the first place. Let me tell you, I was press ganged into it by other people. My only concern on this, Chairman, when the bus was in Walsall, I just want an assurance now. I was told that if you ordered a bus today, it could be 2 years down the line before it was delivered. Now, again, that puts another delay into the process.
Yeah, we've had that feedback, Councillor Bird, and fully understand that. So we've engaged extensively, with various different suppliers in the market, and the lead times on the vehicles are around 14 months, so well within the programme that we've set out here. I did go back and clarify this with Andy, who you were speaking to at the time, and I think that the view that he was putting forward was that was kind of the overall delivery time of the project, not specifically on the vehicles. So in this instance, we are kind of substantially ahead and already within that kind of 2-year time frame that he was thinking about. So we've got good confidence that this can be delivered within the timescales set out.
And is that possible for it to be a UK supplier? That was the other issue I raised.
Yeah, so we're looking at a number of different procurement options to keep the market as open as possible. I mean, it is a niche product, so the supplier Irizar, who you saw in Walsall, they are currently kind of the market leader and the only one who are developing a vehicle or have a vehicle in right-hand drive. We have spoken to one other British supplier who are in development of a product. It's at quite early stages at the moment, and but we are having those conversations and are looking at routes to keep it as open as possible. So if they can develop and build a product within the timescales that we have, then they'll certainly be in consideration.
Pick up on Councillor Bird's point in relation to timescales. I mean, you put in here about an 18-month delivery. So, I mean, is it likely to be viable to get it within that timescale?
Yeah, so as we said, the lead time on vehicles that we've had from the market is 14 months, is what they've been telling us. The other two elements of the programme are then infrastructure. So the charging infrastructure, Walsall, and then the ticketing solution and then the ticketing infrastructure. So on the charging infrastructure, again, an 18 months kind of fits with experience we've had elsewhere, and again should be viable. The ticketing solution is probably the most compressed element of the project, but we have options to kind of mitigate this and almost bring forward a 2-stage solution if we need to. So if the ticketing infrastructure isn't ready, we can initially bring forward a pay your driver and then rear door alike option, and then bring forward the full buy before you board ticketing option at a later date, if ultimately that's the solution that's recommended as part of the follow-on business case.
Councillor Bird.
Yeah, I mean, Wolverhampton doesn't really have any skin in this game beyond thinking that we need regional transport options improved. I think we've gone for the best possible option. We need this to operate as border light as fast as possible. Once upon a time, I actually used the service that we replicated to get to work. I did my teacher training at the Walsall campus University of Wolverhampton, I know that this corridor does need improvements, and quite frankly, this is probably the best solution that we're going to see this decade. And so ultimately, I'm supportive of it, and I think we've picked the right option. Align it with tram as much as possible, and I think we might be able to get the modal shift in people using it. So I just want to get this one ahead now.
Can I just thank you for thinking it's going to be in this decade? I think that's a plus. It should have been in 2022. So you're quite right. I mean, I'm not a bus user, but it is the link to Solihull. Of course, that also links into the airport, which of course is one of our major assets in the West Midlands. And I think we don't promote that enough. But certainly, you know, if it happens, it happens. It might not be in my lifetime the way things are looking.
You're doing yourself down, guys. There's a few questions from myself. It's the fixed price question again. You know, if we go to a couple of suppliers, are we sort of in there? How can you put it? That they will be in the situation of dictating the price, and is the money that we've got there going to cover it?
So it's a good question. Appreciate that one. So the business case itself has been developed off a commercial offer by the supplier Irizar, who previously came to visit us in Warsaw late last year. In that period, actually, you know, things have moved on substantially. So I think if we'd been going to buy this vehicle 6 months, a year ago, we'd have almost been in a supplier situation of one. We are now looking at a supplier situation of at least 3, maybe up to 5, which will create that commercial tension and commercial pressure on those suppliers to essentially, hopefully, well, and our expectation is that we should be able to achieve that price, if not actually lower it from what was set out previously. More widely within the normal bus market, we've actually seen price reductions on electric vehicles, and principally that comes from the wholesale reduction in price of batteries. So overall, all the signs point to that we will, at minimum, be able to achieve the pricing that's set out here, if not better it.
Okay, and there's a couple of other questions or points. Is there a sinking fund there for the replacement of them when they start to break down, or you know, they come to the end of their useful life?
Yeah, so we're targeting a life of 16 years for these vehicles. So at the moment, we don't have funding cover for future replacements. We see that would be subject to future funding cycles and funding availability, as you would see with projects such as Midlands Metro, etc. If down the line, given the kind of funding and commercial context of the network, we don't have that budget, we still have the option to revert back to standard bus and continue to operate service in that route.
But they're always our buses, aren't they? They don't go to the network supplier, do they? They're always vested in us, aren't they?
Sorry, can you clarify that question?
Whoever gets the contract under the franchising, the buses still remain ours, don't they?
Yes, they do.
So we need to make arrangements to get them replaced. So I think it is vital that we have some of that factored in somewhere. We do need that to be looked at. I mean, we all know that the transport side of things, in terms of from a budgetary point of view, have always been stretched to, you know, that's where the problem has laid all along in the combined authority. So I think we've got to think about this in advance of them becoming defunct, so to speak.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think it's a fair challenge. Obviously, within the funding cycles at the moment, we've got capital funding securities up to 2032 with the TCR funding. these vehicles won't go well beyond that, so they'll be operating into the 2040s. So you know, we don't have that kind of future visibility on funding at this stage. But at the right time, obviously, you know, we will begin to look at what the funding options are for replacement.
I think the right time is now, and I think if we approve these recommendations, it will be with the proviso that the Director for Transport for West Midlands comes back with proposals for the sinking fund to replace them.
Chairman, can I just ask whether any further thoughts have been given to the ticketing? Because I'm told that's another 5.5 million. Is that correct, Martin?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so yeah, we're doing a lot of work in the background on this as part of our wider franchising strategy development and working through kind of all the contractual side, really. So it's why we haven't made a decision yet on the specifics of the ticketing arrangements, is because it's tied in with the wider how we're going to manage the contracts, how we're going to manage revenue protection and enforcement and those kind of activities. So we're doing that all in the round with our ticketing colleagues and a wider franchise piece. So yeah, that's work in progress. The stops on the corridor were designed with off-board ticketing in mind in terms of ticket vending machines. So from a physical infrastructure perspective, that's already been considered. It's really around the financial arrangements, the contracts and so on and so forth. And the business case set out the options and looked at potential use of conductors, looked at off-board ticketing, and looked at a pay the driver scenario. And it was clear from that work that the use of conductors on these vehicles would be difficult to deliver from a financial sustainability perspective. Off-board ticketing was demonstrated a benefit, so that's what we're looking at. But yeah, it needs to be done in the round with the other franchising discussions and conversations in terms of the kind of network management.
I think it's important to understand, Chairman, that if you've only got off-board ticketing, people will get on and not pay. You know, I saw that on the trams. That's off-board ticketing there, unless you've got a conductor somehow checking the tickets. Otherwise, people travel for free.
And this is, I mean, this is an ongoing conversation at the moment in terms of how we would manage that process. There is obviously a concern around revenue protection on these vehicles, and that's why we're working with franchising colleagues on the kind of the overarching solution for this that minimises that revenue loss associated with it, maximises our benefits in terms of building benefits from journey time, boarding time savings. And comes up with an optimal solution. You know, there's no question that you know, it's a different environment on the bus where you don't have to walk past the driver to check and validate your ticket, and that's why we need to be really careful that we pick the right solution that enables us to get the balance right between that swift boarding and alighting arrangement and the fair collection and revenue protection.
Just to say that the ticketing side of things is brought up in item 4 on the recommendation.
Yeah.
Yeah. If nobody has any more questions, can we move to the recommendations then? Is everybody in agreement with those on page 83, 1 to 5?
Great.
Yeah. Agreed?
Yep.
Councillor Mahmood?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. We move on to item 10 then, 11, sorry, that's Drive 35, the West Midlands Regional Pilot Supplier Readiness and Transformation Fund. Paul Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. For those of you who don't know me, Paul Edwards, Head of Economic Development here at Combined Authority, and one of my roles is working through how we unlock the potential growth of our businesses. I've also got Charlie Hopkirk here with me, who's been leading a lot of negotiations with the Department for Business and Trade. So any questions in detail by Charlie too as well. By way of introduction, I've got 6 short points to make, and then happy to open the floor for questions. I think it's really important to note that this is a specific Department of Business and Trade funded pilot. where they have selected the West Midlands to take that forwards alongside the North East. Their funding will only provide capital funding, and to be really clear, it is capital funding. There's co-investment into our businesses. It's not funding for the public sector in any way, shape or form, other than that it will go through the combined authority bank accounts rather than deposits in place bank accounts. What it will enable is £50 million of investment into West Midlands-based firms, and the aim of that is actually co-investment, so the firm will also invest in 3 million, 100% grant, and that will help in transition out of traditional automotive, so internal combustion engine, into the future of the industry. Goes without saying, but it's probably worth saying this fully aligns with the strategic priorities of the West Midlands Growth Plan and also with existing regional and national revenue funding programmes, so complements those. We've had from a kind of security engagement from the region, we've got an industry-led advisory board who steered us to this point. We've also had 2 quite in-depth sessions with your directors of economy and regeneration, going through to make sure it's meeting the needs of our business. So subject to investment board approval today, this will go forward to the full board as part of a wider economic development and regeneration pillar paper, as is in the paper, Chair. And there was 3 things that I just wanted to pull out if I have some questions on the aspects. So one is that there is no revenue provided by the Department of Business and Trade. So we have prioritised that revenue resource around professional technical appraisal, and that funding, which is relatively small in the scheme of things, will come out of the integrated settlement. So that is effectively to secure some expert advisors to tell us, well, actually, is this a good use of public money in terms of helping our firms advance, and what we can do with due diligence in terms of public value for money, audit and fraud risk. We actually need someone to tell us, is this a good use of funding in terms of driving forwards the automotive industry in the region? So there's some management funding allocated to that. The other, so that's in section 7 of the report. Then I'd also Chair highlight section 8, which talks about some of the legal risks, particularly around subsidiary control and potential fraud. And whilst the appraisal says that we've got good mitigations in place to mitigate those, I just want to highlight to us, the Chair, that those were picked out. So this is a new thing for combined authority and for the region to take on. So just worth pointing those through. And then the last thing that I would say, Chair, is the recommendation points through the funding agreements have yet to be agreed, so we are seeking delegated authority to our finance to approve them, subject to the final term conditions. So we've not had those yet. Happy to take.
Okay. Councillor Overall.
So on the face of it, this seems like a really good, plan. And I noticed that Coventry's on the steering group as local authority, which is good. That leads me to the obvious question, because clearly, transformation in terms of if you're building exhaust pipes today, you won't be building them tomorrow. How do you help support those SMEs in order to invest now when they're just bothered about the bottom line today? They haven't got that facility, they haven't got that capability. So all of this makes sense, but I'm intrigued to know, because it doesn't really make it very clear in the paper how will these businesses be sourced? Because there must be some kind of background in terms of where are these businesses, and what support will be available to them, and what is the role of the economic delivery vehicle as well? Because the last thing that any organisation wants is just advice. They'll want some clear support. And I've been to loads of over the last number of years, particularly automotive sector. And one that springs to mind just recently, as part of when JLR was hacked, and the impact that had in Coventry was pretty dramatic. A company called EvTech that used to be the old Remploy, and the company that own it, they own a couple of sites. I think they've got 3 sites, but the big one they've got in Coventry is still the old Remploy site, and they predominantly still support. They employ people with disabilities. So that's a real sort of, important point to make. But when JLR went down, it's about 80-90% of their, their order book, and they were laid off. It was really tough. And actually being able to diversify and all the rest of it is really key, really important. So I'm just interested to know sort of, how and where the source will come from, the businesses, what you can do to support them, and the delivery vehicle as well, what impact that can have.
I must admit that's one of my questions. I mean, you talked about 80 businesses. I presume you've mapped where those are. Can we be given some indications as to where they're likely to be? That's a concern as well.
Shall I pick up Councillor Boyle's question first?
Yeah.
If you could talk about some of the geography. So they're exactly the right question, of course. So I think there's kind of three answers which hopefully will give you some comfort that we've thought about this. So one is we have an industry steering board that's helping us steer this. So actually we've reached out to those industry partners, so like sort of the MTC, White Manufacturing Group, actually JLR themselves, to really help identify those firms. So we're not starting from a cold start. And I think Charlie gets wrong. But I think the board will identify over 100 companies who we think might be. So there's not all of them will be, because they won't be investing. And if you're not on the investments, it's the right time on the investment side, the right years invested. You also asked about the advice these firms will receive, so it's not just a capital grant. But as members, we're almost certain, through the investment zone revenue funding, we have a specialist supply chain transition programme, which is, if you like, the specialist advice. And the idea is that these two programmes fully complement each other. So the advisors that go out and talk to the companies will know that we've got this capital pot sat in the background, sat in the bank account that those firms can apply for. And then the third, you asked about the economic development vehicle and the Westminster Growth Movement next year. It's fully the intent that the advisors sat in the Westminster Growth Company from April are doing two things. One, promoting this scheme, talking to our high growth potential small businesses, but also actually at the back end, monitoring the usage of this equipment. So ultimately this will buy new equipment firms, but actually we want to know that they're using it and it's part of their manufacturing process, and it's not just a white elephant. Unlikely that's the case, but we just need to comfort ourselves that will take place. So that does answer your question.
I think because we're sitting on the board, I should be keeping a close eye on this, because I think this is, of all the number of things we've talked about today, I think this is, in terms of economic opportunity, it's really important, particularly transition, because that's the thing. Too many companies are just not in a position to transition, and that's a big issue. It doesn't matter whether I'm for or against electric; it's happening whether you like it or not. That's the way these OEMs are going, and the supply chain is massive in this region, and it needs supported big time.
Charlie, did you talk about the spatial issue?
Yeah, definitely. So just to kind of reaffirm what Paul said about the pipeline development, we've been working with that kind of steering group to pull out those potential companies, as Paul mentioned. There'll then obviously be a process of approving strong applications through an application and then appraisal process, and that's where the kind of independent expert kind of subject matter knowledge will need to come in, as well as kind of value for money, financial checks, etc. So I think from that kind of long list, as we kind of get into the programme itself over that 4-year period, so it's not kind of 50 million up front, it's going to be kind of spread across those 4 years. In terms of the scope, I think is going to be critically important to make it really clear which companies can apply into this from a geography, but also from a kind of technology perspective as well. What we don't want to do is make this look like a kind of high technology readiness program around just battery and just that kind of aspect of EV, but really understand where can those kind of transitional elements for supply chain companies support those companies that are manufacturing different parts of components, maybe in the ICE supply chain at the moment, internal combustion engine, but can meet the needs of the EV market. So I think having that really clear technology eligibility scope that is in kind of business terms makes sense to companies that might be able to apply as part of their investment cycle is really important. In terms of the geography, so eligibility will cover the combined authority, including non-constituent members. We think that's quite important in terms of the supply chain of automotive doesn't stop at the border. So we're really clear with DBT on trying to negotiate and understand the opportunity for, yes, the Warwickshires, but also companies out in other parts of the non-con members. So there is a wider than just the 7 Met eligibility, which we think is really important. But yeah, I think alongside the technology eligibility and the kind of value for money eligibility, there's going to be lots in there, a lot of robustness in the process, but we need to make that look as simple as possible to the business base and engaging with them to work through the best projects, I suppose.
I'm slightly concerned at what you've just delivered to us, because I think the priority should be the 7 Mets, but first and foremost. There's deprivation, deep deprivation in certain parts of the combined authority, which could be turned around with SMEs that are developing and making more jobs. So particularly in the Black Country. And I think you didn't answer the question really. You just said we'll expand it beyond the boundary. You didn't talk about the geography of where these 80 companies were. We've got to have got some idea of what of spatial distribution with that.
Yeah. So we can certainly, I think we've looked at about 100, haven't we? So we can certainly provide this board with a breakdown of where that is, by geography.
Yeah.
Of course, it depends on where those firms are in their investment cycle. So if a firm's not looking to invest, we can't ask them to invest. My understanding, and each of them we can provide this to you properly, so don't hold on to this 10 minutes, is that it broadly reflects the spatial geography, the business base of the area. With, I think there's a slight tip towards Coventry, just because of where the automotive supply chain sit, Coventry and Warwickshire. But there's lots of fabricators, as you well know, in the Black Country that sit in all sorts of supply chains. So they will be.
I know one in particular that's that were affected by the JLR problem, and instantly after laid people on, and that they supplied it,
But we can certainly give you a breakdown of.
Yeah.
I think what might be helpful as well is, because I take the point entirely, because I understand exactly where you're coming from. But at the same time, clearly, industry doesn't recognise, some artificial, metropolitan boundaries. I worked at Peugeot for 20 years. It was in Coventry, except it wasn't. It was in Wrighton. But the vast majority of people who worked there lived in Coventry. I was down at a company called Maven the other day, who are just in Coventry. And I spoke to a number of people, and a number of those people working there, they were travelling from Rugby, they were travelling from Bedworth. It was annoying me, actually, to be honest with you. They live in Coventry. One or two did. So I think actually having that understanding as well, I think will be important in terms of where they source their staff from, because there's a skill element of this as well, of course, about the ability to upskill our workforce as well, which I know there's a lot of other areas of that's really important in terms of these new opportunities.
I think one of my concerns is that some of these medium-sized businesses are probably more likely to be in the zone of being able to put applications together and get all the information together. It's what's if you've got smaller businesses that really need that investment and they haven't got the wherewithal to actually know how to go about it, it's the support that's needed there. And to what degree will the officers involved in this be talking to our business support officers locally as well? Because you can't just leave them out of the game, so to speak, because that they know the businesses directly, don't they?
Yeah, I'm briefing some of them later this week actually, and I think it's a really good point about the geography. I think we need to find the right balance. Maybe there's some kind of portfolio approach or targets around that, because I think it's helpful to have that non-con geography, because in particular there's lots of companies in Warwickshire, but then we don't want to exclude companies that are just over the boundary and really important to our residents and our economy. But at the same time, 100% funding is not going to go to Oswestry and Shropshire or something like that. So I think we need to work that out a little bit more, and I'm happy to do that. Maybe we can.
I think that would cover my concerns, particularly. You know, I think there's got to be a balance shown there, and I think, as I say, I would say there's a lot of smaller firms in the back country that would need additional support to go through this process.
Sure.
There's also the match funding element as well. You know, we've got businesses that have been rocked by the economy basically, and you're going to find that some of these small businesses are not necessarily in that place to invest, but they probably would need to. You know, they would benefit from this. And how do we get around that situation? Is there other elements of support we can give from a financial background? I know we've got 50% coming in, but we, you know, can we leave a support in from somewhere else?
So we're a little bit bound by subsidy control.
Yeah.
So there's a limit to what we can do. I think my view, my advice, what we should do is we should really focus on giving them those small firms the expert advice through things like the Supply Chain Transition Programme, which is funded under the investment zone. And actually, the other thing that we're talking through is making sure that there's a two-stage application process, so there's a really light touch expression of interest. So those small firms don't have to fill in reams and reams of paperwork to secure the funding. They can actually do something fairly light, and we can then give them some advice whether this is right for them or wrong for them. But ultimately, Councillor Heath, it does have to come down to whether those firms are prepared to invest. This isn't, you know, we can't give these firms 100% of the funding, but I think we'll do everything we can to make sure small businesses could benefit from this, because ultimately, if it doesn't, it's a failed programme.
Yeah. Okay. On that basis, if there are no further questions, can we move to the recommendations, page 103?
Yep. Great.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So I'm staying. I've just got to go to the loo. I've been here that long.
Right, quickly pass everything while he's out of the room.
Yeah. At this point, can we move on to agenda item 8, which is the exclusion of the public and press, please? Yeah, and that's the exclusion of the public press in accordance with section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972. Public and press be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business, as they're likely to involve the disclosure of exempt information as specified in the paragraphs of the Act. Thank you.